Get in on the action this season with Underdog's Pick'em game. Select higher or lower between 2 and 8 players and compete for up to 325 times your entry. Use code DIRECTOR when signing up to receive up to $1,000 in bonus cash and a free pick. Kia ora, Bolt fam, it's the Director. Chargers fans, one day closer to kickoff. Actually, I'm really looking forward to, obviously, training camp. Mandatory minicamp is around the corner. Of course, that Hall of Fame game coming up July 31st. That's kind of wild to me. It's going to be a fun one. I think some people dismiss it. I'm excited. I'm one of those yahoos that love preseason football as well. Just gives you an extra added layer of flavor for camp battles and depth, and just seeing that powder blue out on the field one extra week ain't going to hurt nobody. So I'm excited about all that, man. But let's get into the ins and outs of this video today. We're going to be talking about a Chargers new signing, a new look on offense, how the wide receivers, running backs are looking, some of the outer works too of like some of the external things happening. We got Aaron Rodgers, who we're going to be dealing with in week 10 all of a sudden. We got ex-Chargers moving on to other AFC West teams, etc., etc. We're going to get you guys caught up and all the inner happenings and inner workings and the news of the week in today's video. It should be a really fun one. Get our takes, get all the Bolt fam reactions in the chat as well. Let's get into it. Before we do, shout out to the sponsor, Underdog. Use code DIRECTOR to receive up to $1,000 in bonus cash. Newcomers, take advantage of the offer on screen. It's a great way to support my platform while having some fun along the way. Before we do kick off, hit us up with a like and sub. If you do enjoy this Chargers content, the small amount of time you guys take, that the like, sub, and bell notification helps me out a lot. Let's get into it. Lights, camera, action.
Who's got it better than us?
Into the end zone, Charger fans are witnesses to history.
Your Chargers catch me up info dump of the Saturday afternoon. Let's go ahead and start off with the new signing. Everyone's like, oh, what's going on with the signing? What's going on with the signing? Well, we got Bud Dupree back on an extension. Some people will say, the Director signing. I think this is a nice signing. I think Bud Dupree has really worked himself and proven a system that works in Los Angeles. The edge position, man. I mean, we say this all the time on the channel when, talking about our edge players and that rotation. A lot of the defense is built on the idea of having a consistent pass rush, and you want consistent quality pass rush at that. And Bud Dupree has done awesome. 6 sacks in rotation last year. Of course, now we don't have Joey Bosa, which again breaks my heart, but it had to be done and we have to adjust. And I think getting some stability in terms of that edge 3/4 role, which is very prominent in the Chargers defensive system and scheme, I do think Bud Dupree sticking around another year or two was a good idea. It just buys us more time to continue finding answers. Of course, Kyle Kennard is likely going to be that answer at, again, either edge 3 or 4 with Bud Dupree. But getting that consistency early, I think, is pretty important. For those of you guys concerned about the numbers, it's a $6 million extension. It's going to shake out to about $3.8 million a year for the next 2 years. So definitely a budget signing, and one where I don't mind the money going here, man. There's a lot of teams that, they make a big splash. There's a big name coming in. Fans get excited. We've done that recently. That huge year that we brought in, Khalil Mack and J.C. Jackson, all these names, that can work for some teams. But I think a more consistently proven method is to find these solid players all over the roster that can step in when disaster, inevitably strikes. And Bud Dupree, number one, being a part of that consistent pass rush, which is so important, is great. But just the depth that this team is offering all over the roster is pretty exciting. So welcome back, Bud Dupree. I'm excited to see the Chargers pass rush continue to find stability, identity. And then Kyle Kennard, man, we're going to keep a close eye on him as training camp and everything edges a little bit closer. OTAs have been great. We have mandatory minicamp next week. This position of edge, man, I'm excited to see how that flows. I don't know how much in terms of a competition we're going to see, but, Kyle Kennard, Bud Dupree, that'll probably be the big one. But Bud sticking around for a while longer, that's always a good sign. Next up, moving into nice little moves from Tyler Conklin. I'm going to say this right off, man. We talked a little bit about the potential of a tight end trade, right, in my last video, which, of course, that's always a possibility. But nothing against Tyler Conklin, man. Like we've said this entire time, Tyler Conklin is going to be one of the more stable tight end situations that we've had in a long time. Like he's as good as the next guy. And what's funny enough is that there were so many tight ends flying off the board in the draft, in free agency. The gap between Tyler Conklin and a lot of these guys is not as big as you think. You know, Conklin, in my opinion, is going to be solid for 600-ish yards, 3 or 4 touchdowns, and that's going to be in and around, I'm going to say, average for the position, which the Chargers have been lacking that average play from tight end for a few seasons now. Nothing against Will Dissly, by the way. Will Dissly did fantastic, being shoved into that role last season. But Conklin's a different beast, and he talked about it. I'm not quite sure what podcast it was. I saw a clip floating around on TikTok, but he was talking about his situation in New York, how the tight end situation wasn't always so stable. That was kind of obvious when he was playing, but now being with Justin Herbert, things are a lot different. It's very obvious that things are a lot different. And I think, honestly, guys, Tyler Conklin could be moving towards a career season, and one in which that helps the Chargers, again, find that stability on offense. It kind of feels like the theme of this season. Last season, it really felt like getting your feet under you, start building a tiny foundation of what you want to become. We found out the defense was in a really good spot. Jesse Minter is a god in terms of DC. Now it's time to find some stability on offense. It kind of feels like that's the rhythm that we're starting to catch on to as we go on. For those of you guys interested as well, training camp dates have been announced. I attended training camp personally last year. It was awesome. I don't know if we're going to have time to go this year. Makes me sad. We'll see. Well, maybe, late possibilities. But for those of you guys interested, July 17th through July 8th, some various dates in between that bracket. Those will be the days that you can go find tickets for training camp. Again, take it from me, it was an awesome experience. So many die-hard Chargers fans in one place, because you got to be a fan to go to a game. You got to be a super fan to go to training camp and meet all the like-minded Chargers folks there, getting to see all the players up close and them practicing. Like, it's an awesome experience. So if you guys want to get a slice of that, definitely check it out if you've never had the opportunity. And for those of you veterans, they're going to be attending the San Diego area once again this year like they did last year on July 22nd and 23rd. Very excited, man. Love that Jim Harbaugh and his roots in San Diego are always paying homage, through these training camps or through these practice dates and all that kind of stuff. I think it's going to be awesome. And again, Hall of Fame game, July 31st, kind of smacked in the middle of those dates as well. So go check out the Chargers website if you're interested in tickets and stuff. I think there's like a sign up for it. Keep an eye out for the dates because you want to be online when those go up. They can go pretty quick. All right. Speaking of important dates, also keep in mind in your calendar, circle it, bold it, underline it. We got mandatory minicamp coming up next week, June 10th through 12th. And this is the first kind of, looking glass onto the roster as to what our situation is this season. Kind of giving you an idea of what camp battles are really going to look like, what the depth is looking like. If there's any contract situations that need tying up, this is kind of part of the timeline where fines can start being thrown out there. So you might see some contracts in the works, but otherwise, this is a really, really good time to start getting an actual look at the roster and what they're trying to build. And this early, it's always a really good idea in mandatory minicamp and early camps, OTAs, to see where your weaknesses are, if there's any late signings that you want to make, which we're going to talk a little bit about here in a second as well. So mandatory minicamp, that's coming up next week. Of course, we're going to be covering that. Another thing, a couple of cool interviews. One on the Chargers Weekly with Matt Money Smith. They brought in a couple of really cool guests, one including Greg Roman, the offensive coordinator. He got to talk a little bit about what he sees in the team in the future. One of the biggest things that he made emphasis on was Joe Alt, which obviously being, the kind of OC that he is, the kind of system that he likes to build. Joe Alt is kind of that star pupil, that, that wonderkin, that guy that you really want to lean on because he's a special dude at his position that's so important to running the football, providing protection for Justin Herbert. And that's something that he's extremely invested in terms of, what he's throwing down for an improvement for the season. He thinks that he's going to get an all-pro type season from Joe Alt this year, which is very exciting to think about because the Chargers, last season, we all expected to see a year where you got this like offensive line whisperer, right? Where Jim Harbaugh views the offensive line a certain way. So does Greg Roman. And I think they're starting to work that in, right? You're starting to see the fruits of that come. And I really do think that Joe Alt was maybe the dream pick for them last year in the draft. What he produced in his rookie season was indeed very special, and I think that this year, going into year 2, you're going to start to see a lot of that upside start to rise to the top for this guy, which is very exciting to think about. The Chargers, the way that they're going to be running the football, the kind of speed and explosiveness now that we have with Amari and Hampton, you can almost say the same thing about Naji Harris. We'll get into in just a second as well. Having that paired with a guy like Joe Alt, very exciting. Just him last year, very exciting. Leveling up this year, per the words of Greg Roman, I really do think you're going to see something special out of him this year. That's going to be awesome. Speaking of awesome, man, of course, maybe one of the most predictable aspects of the offseason is Lad Makoni being awesome, right? Lad Makoni putting on a show. I've seen a few clips now floating around from OTAs of him plucking that ball out of the air, him and Justin Herbert having a good time. Seems that him and Darius Davis are good buds too. Just seems like really good energy in the wide receiver quarterback chemistry and rooms all of a sudden. Feels really good, man. Last season, a lot of question marks. We weren't quite sure what it was going to look like with all of these vacancies all of a sudden, with Mike gone and Keenan gone, and, was Palmer going to step up, and all that kind of, resulted in a largely mediocre season for the wide receiver position. Outside of Lad Makoni, maybe some, waves of Quinton Johnson, it was largely very inconsistent. This year, you're starting to see some pretty cool stuff headed by Lad Makoni, and we're going to say Justin Herbert, man. Those two gaining chemistry and those two finding a rhythm, you're going to see something, in my opinion, this year very similar to what Justin Herbert had with Keenan Allen, right? Lad Makoni, in a lot of ways, when he was being drafted, we had draft profiles that we were talking about with him and, comparisons to different NFL pro, players. Lad Makoni, for a lot of people, had some Keenan Allen in him. The way that he's able to get open on third down, keep drives alive, the route running, and then you add that extra flavor of that, speed that he's got on top of it, what he can do on the outside, because let's not call him a slot receiver. He hates that, according to Sanjay Law, the wide receivers coach. Lad Makoni could really be that next big thing, and to hear that they're growing in chemistry, which is something that Lad Makoni mentioned, is awesome. And of course, it's something that you expect, but we also have to start, recognizing that the next level that we're about to see. Lad Makoni, wide receiver 1, Justin Herbert. We know what both of them are capable of. We're going to start seeing that Keenan Allen kind of role out of Lad Makoni, which really all the supporting cast is going to help elevate. We knew this with the draft, all these guys coming in. Now we're going to start seeing that in full form as OTAs are coming to a close. You got the mandatory minicamp coming up. You're going to continue to see why Lad's going to be a center point of this offense, which we'll talk more about in just a second. As for the other wide receivers, the rookies, which everybody asks about day in and day out, Director, how are the rookies looking? They're looking awesome. In terms, short answers, they're looking great. It seems that they're going to be worked in, though. That's what Sanjay Law, the wide receivers coach, is saying, that they're working in the rookies. They got to get them into game shape, NFL shape, and start growing that chemistry with the quarterbacks. But obviously, we've already started to see some pretty big, I'm not going to say tape, but just, highlights from these guys in OTAs and in practice. It feels like we got something special here. Keandre Lambert-Smith, he looks different. I don't know what I was expecting out of him when we drafted him, like maybe a camp guy, maybe a guy that, special teams upside. But man, does he look fast. He looks crisper than I was expecting in terms of route running, and especially in the deep part of the field where he graded as one of the craziest players in college ball last season. You're going to see some nice moves to him, and I would expect at least something out of him in training camp in terms of buzz, in terms of hotness. Like the wide receiver battle is going to be the one to watch this season. I think Keandre Lambert's going to be smack dab in the middle of it. Trey Harris, though, we've seen already a lot of cool stuff. There's some accounts out there saying, "Oh, director, he looks slow. We got another this and that." No, dude, trust me. The kind of archetype, the kind of wide receiver we have in Trey Smith or in Trey Harris really is something special. We've already started to see his separation. And again, not all of this stuff is at full speed, not even close. So in terms of his speed, you're going to have to wait. You're going to see maybe a little bit more at a mini camp, a little bit, definitely a lot more at a training camp. But Trey Harris is certainly going to be a very, very nice piece of this offense that at the end of the day is going to be fighting for that starting position with Lad Makoni. You're going to see a nice rotation of these guys, which lastly, where does that put Quinton Johnson, right? A lot of people asking, well, Quinton Johnson, we should trade him, we should do this, we should do that. I think we still have something to maybe hope for in Quinton Johnson of like a big season that defines him, right? He's been held back by, we all know it, the drops. The drops, I hate to say it, wipe away a lot of the good that he does for this team. Because let's be honest, last season he didn't have a bad year. Like, he had a nice handful of yards, really nice touchdown stat for him. Was it like 8 scores last year? Like, he had a really nice bounce back year, but the drops wiped away most of that in the eyes of the fans, which is fair. Like, that's something that he's gonna have to clean up. This year, the expectation is really high. It was last year. Of course, it was his rookie year too, but we have to recognize growth. If Quinton Johnson can clean up the drops, let's cut it in half even, right? And continue to produce or accelerate at the level he was in year 2, we might have something here. And that's something that Sanjay Lal was mentioning in his, interviews as well, that Quinton Johnson, he's growing still. He's finding his footing, in terms of his NFL career. He's been labeled a starter by Law. He says, hey, you're the starter, right now. And that's something that is going to be challenged throughout the course of the offseason. But we can't completely wipe away the good that Quinton Johnson does because of his drops. But we're hoping to see that, big leap for him in his third year, which seems to be the magic season for a lot of wide receivers in the NFL. And I'm not going to completely, dismiss that possibility at all. If Quinton Johnson can really kick it into third gear in his third year, you're looking at a really nice trio of wide receivers with them and Mike Williams and Trey Harris and all these guys. Yeah, I'm very excited to see how that all shakes out. So I'm really rooting for Quinton Johnson. I really am this season. We're going to be keeping a close eye on number 1. But where I think some of the highest praise that I've seen so far in the offseason is coming from is going to be the running backs, which of course you're going to see some hype from this offseason, man. They brought in some of the most ridiculous talent that you could find in both free agency and in the draft to build this new identity on offense. The running backs are wowing. Naji Harris was a top, if not the top free agent running back on the market. You had Omarion Hampton, one of the top running backs in the draft. And you're starting to see that really find a foundation on the offense in the eyes of the coaches. Of course, we were talking about the interview with Greg Roman and Matt Money Smith. One of the things they were talking about was how impressed the coaches are with the running back situation they have in their hands now. In particular, some of the few that they pointed out, Naji Harris was stated as one of those guys that's really wowing and impressing in camp right now, which I think is very commendable. Because the situation for Naji is kind of up and down. When first signed, it's like, wow, okay, what an opportunity. So many players coming in the system and leaving with big contracts, either here or with other teams. What a situation in terms of scheme fit. And then Omarion Hampton is drafted. And a lot of that upside maybe gets capped if you're Naji Harris. So he had one of two reactions to this. One, he could maybe be, a little sour grapes on it, like, all right, maybe, my future here isn't completely solid. We're going to have to this and that. Or he could work his tail off, and it really does feel like he is being that example, that leadership personality that you want in the locker room, which a lot of people were talking about even when we were signing him. And you're seeing that on the field right now. He's a pro. And he's wowing not just with his work ethic and his effort, but also with what he's producing, in OTAs. Greg Roman is blown away by how fast and agile this guy is. Of course, the power that he's bringing to the table. Naji, dude, I'm getting a feeling on Naji Harris. I really think that the Chargers are going to be running this really huge combo of running back with Naji being the Thunder, Hampton being the Lightning, and I have this vision of Naji sticking around for a while. And seeing that the coaches like the fit, they're seeing the results on the field, it gives me hope that could be the future for the Chargers, at least for the next few seasons for Naji Harris. I really see a role here for him. And it's exciting to see that elevation at the position all of the sudden. Coach is also very excited about Amari Hampton, obviously. We've talked your ear off about him. You guys know he's a huge playmaker. He's got the receiving capability, which I've been, slamming the table for. Like, guys, remember, if you're a fantasy football player, this guy's going to get peppered with targets because of Justin Herbert as well. But the guy that also was really standing out to Coach Roman was Kamani Vidal as well. They're saying that he's standing out a lot. His approach to everything has been awesome. He's going to be a great depth piece. They also mentioned Rocket Sanders as well. It really feels like that's going to be your big four, right? You got Hampton, Naji, Kamani, and Rocket. It kind of feels like that's going to be the room. And honestly, that's the best the Chargers running back room has looked in forever. I mean, in forever, dude. So I'm very excited. I'm very, very excited. And in the terms of what that's making the offense look like, too, just this is why, again, the theme of the video kind of has been the offense finding its footing, right? It looks transformed. You got Herbert. You got the running backs in Hampton and Naji. You've got, Lad Makoni. Then all their supporting cast all of a sudden looks amazing. We didn't even mention Gadsden, who could end up being a really nice tight end option to, mix in with Conklin. The offense is going to be way different looking this season. And I think it may end up being one of the more scary offenses for defenses to look out for this year. So watch out, man. The theme of the year, which is becoming more apparent as we get closer to training camp, really feels like a big boost to the offense. All right. A lot of people also asking me what's going on with Rashan Slater. All I'm going to say here, guys, is the Chargers, if you look at their signings, I don't know, let's look at the last 10 years or so, right? It does feel like their sweet spot is in July, right? Right before training camp. I'm not too worried about the Rashan Slater situation yet, man. I will let you know when I'm worried, but it just feels like, this is the normal process. They're jumping through hoops. They're doing what they got to do. I'm not worried yet. I will let you know when I'm worried. So all I'm going to say right now is maybe expect, his new contract to be announced sometime in the early parts of July. All right, that's what we're going to say. All right, moving on. Some news outside the Chargers before we get into a couple of OTA-looking bits of news there. J.K. Dobbins, again, this is a small bit of news, visiting with Denver, dude. I saw this on social media yesterday. I was like, no. And you know what? Honestly, I get it. J.K. Dobbins, great running back. We all know it as Chargers fans. The health. It's been the cloud over his career this entire time. So finding a situation where he can play is not a bad idea. Just please, anywhere else. Don't go to the AFC West, please. That's all we're saying. We understand he's a capable running back that needs to start somewhere and needs to get snaps somewhere, and we want this for him, but please not the AFC West. That's all we're asking. Outside of that, you guys have probably heard by now, Aaron Rodgers has signed his deal in Pittsburgh. He went and bought a mansion out there, too. You guys see that? This does affect the Chargers. Of course, we play them week 10, right, if I'm not mistaken. This is something that we all expected, okay? And it's something that honestly does take them from, in my opinion, what would have been an easy win to a very tough game. Aaron Rodgers is so up and down. But if you get one of those games where he's up, man, it's tough. And the Steelers are already a really good team, right? They got that foundation built for the longest time that the Chargers are trying to build right now in terms of toughness. Their defense is nasty. Their run game is great. They ended up getting Caleb Johnson, right? And they already had, of course, Warren out there too. It's a good team. They got DK Metcalf. They got weapons for days. They got Aaron Rodgers. This may be Aaron Rodgers' best situation since Green Bay. So, I mean, yeah, just keep an eye on it. It makes week 10 a little sketchier, so I wanted to give you guys a heads up on that. Finally, the last couple of things to look at, the offensive line and the tight ends a little bit in OTAs, which is very interesting to look at. One, keep an eye on this guy, number 41, Steve-O Klotz. There's actually two 41s on the roster right now, RJ Mickens and Klotz. Okay, so look for the names. Of course, one is white, one is black. Keep an eye on the number 41s is all I'm going to say, okay? Keep them in your minds as this standout safety who I was very interested in drafting late in the draft this last year. I'm very high on him. I think he could be in rotations in Mickens, but we're talking more about Klotz, who's been a standout in OTAs so far as an undrafted free agent. This guy, he at Iowa State, more of a fullback, I would say, but a very good blocking tight end too. And of course, the Chargers, I would expect them to roster 4 tight ends. And right now, Klotz is kind of the guy behind, we'll say, Gadsden right now is that additional, blocking tight end, because you're going to see tight end very involved this year. And if you're a good blocker, that's something that, you're going to see in terms of a camp battle. There's the other guy too, man. It's escaping my mind right now. We have another really good blocking tight end that came in last season as a really decent blocker too. I'm going to expect to see a bit of him and Klotz, kind of duking it out in training camp. Help me out in the chat, guys, or help me out in the comment section. I did like that guy coming in late. But probably the biggest story that you're going to see, one of the biggest that you're going to see in training camp, of course, is going to be, the offensive line shakeup. Because we got some really good pieces. I'm going to say 3 elite pieces on this offensive line, of course, of the tackles and now Mekhi Becton. But we're trying to see, where we can get the most out of some of the interior guys, and more specifically the left guard and the center position. And we're starting to see a lot of different variations in testing this out. Of course, now you're seeing Zion Johnson at center, which this could actually be a thing. Seeing the way he works and seeing, his potential there, very high IQ, or I should say offensive lineman, kicking inside is actually not a bad move. And you're starting to see more of it in OTAs. You're going to see more of it in minicamp, which is going to be maybe more of an indicator of how serious this move could be. And there's a lot of potential here. I'm not going to lie. I kind of like it. And that's moving a lot of things around right now from left to right. We saw Pipkins, Bozeman, who was kicked to left guard. You had Zion at center, Becton, and then Alt on the right side. And then a lot of the days you saw Jamari Sawyer in at left tackle too, of course, with, Rashan Slater not out there. You're going to have to see some variations there at tackle. But yeah, this whole Zion Johnson at center thing, I'm really starting to warm up to it. We'll have to see how it goes. We saw a lot of this experimentation in training camp last year. Jordan McFadden at fullback a lot. Of course, one of them did come out as true with Matlock at fullback, which was awesome. So we'll have to wait and see how this shakes out, because there's a lot on the line here, in my opinion. That center position needs to be more solid than it was last year. Andre James, of course, is in the mix there too. So we'll have to wait and see. But that does leave a little bit of a vacancy at left guard. If Zion Johnson does move to center, this has led to a lot of speculation as to what we're going to be doing in terms of that position. And that's where the other part of the signing part in the title comes in, is that there have been whispers and speculation that the Chargers could go after one more free agent in terms of the offensive line. Brandon Sheriff, formerly of the Jaguars, has been talked about to the Chargers a lot. And that's because he's a really good veteran in terms of pass protection. And it's something that honestly he could be a starter right away. He's definitely not bad there. There's other guys like Will Hernandez, Dalton Reisner. There's guys still out there waiting to get signed. But the Chargers are kind of still moving things around, seeing if they need to bring that guy in. So just keep that in mind as we get closer to mandatory minicamp. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining me. This has been the Director. Let me know some of your thoughts on the news coming in out of OTAs this week. Of course, mandatory minicamp is going to be very fun next week as we continue speculating, getting excited for, we'll say, training camp at this point. Very closely monitoring a lot of these camp battles. What do you guys think is going to happen with the wide receivers? Running back feels like it's pretty good, like 1A, 1B with Hampton and Naji. But what are the wide receiver situation going to look like? And the tight end situation? Let me know in the comment section below. Guys, thank you so much for joining me. This has been the Director. We'll catch you next time. As always, bolt up and stay frosty. Guys, just wait for that running back solution there, man. Oh, dude, Naji and Hampton, it's going to be awesome.